Okay, so John Robb here, recording Silver Moth, and look, very varied locations. So, which actually is quite a good summation of the band because the band comes together out of varied locations, doesn't it? You don't, you sort of, some of you knew each other, some of you didn't know each other, and it's a project that sort of comes together out of thin air, really.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of the it's kind of a weird situation because the person that I thought of as kind of the one of the central organizers never turned up, Nick Hudson. So I think Nick knew everyone. Is that right? But he had some things going on and he couldn't make it. So yeah, we were all kind of just sort of thrown together in this studio in the middle of nowhere and just yeah we just got on with it and made a pretty amazing amount of music off the just off the I don't know out of thin air over a few days, and it ended up becoming this kind of ongoing project, which is really great.
It's amazing what happens when you meet people for the first time in a car park.
Yeah. Is that the actual
that, that,
germination?
that, 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 that quote could that quote could be misconstrued in different ways.
I mean, was it a chance meeting, or was it? I mean, I read that it was online, or is it just a mixture of the two?
I mean, some of us were like chatting on Twitter during lockdown when, there wasn't much else to do. And it was that Nick had been to Lewis, and I said something like, "Oh, why don't we just go and make an album there or something?" To Elizabeth and Nick, and then we ended up in a Zoom meeting, and it just kind of happened from there. Really, everyone was really up for it because we'd just been in prison during a plague kind of thing, and the window of opportunity opened that April 21, when we could actually legally do it. And so yeah, it just kind of had its momentum. It just kind of felt good to have a bit of a project to look forward to during that time.
I mean, did you have an idea of what it was going to be? I mean, when you were talking about it, do you sketch out like parameters, or do you just have a feeling that if you got all these people into rooms, something magical may happen?
Mhm. Definitely
I
more
think
of
there wasn't really much of a plan, to be honest. I think a lot of it was to get away and just the nice idea of doing some music in the wilderness. And I mean, to be honest, I didn't think I was going to be that involved because my plan really was to use the time away to write my book, John. I mean, you'll know what that's like. You kind of like have this idea, oh, if I go somewhere else, I'll do loads more work. And rather than that happening, I just said it's up helping or being involved in making an album. I mean, I did write a little bit, but I probably wrote less than I would have if I'd stayed at home. So yeah, I don't think any of us had any expectation. I think it was a bit of a surprise when at the end of it we're like, you know what? Because I think when it went well after the first day, we're like, oh, this could be an EP. And then because some of the songs were pretty long, it was like, well, this could actually be an album. And um, when Pete, the producer, kind of started mixing it, it was like, this is actually going to be a pretty good album. So it kind of it, no, I don't think anyone had any expectations, and it just kind of ended up well, certainly far beyond any idea I had of how it was going to pan out.
Yeah, I mean, when you initially started playing, you set up in the room in the studio. Was just like somebody started playing, let's go, and what was the atmosphere already there? But I'm quite intrigued by this idea that people don't sort of half know each other. Some people know each other, some people don't know each other. You have no sense of direction, but something happens. I mean, was it instant, or was it like a little bit of a jam, feeling it out, and then it starts to meld pretty quickly?
Mm. We when we first got in the space, we just decided to have a warm up, and Pete, who was recording, just hit record, and like 20 minutes later, we were kind of finished warming up, and we thought, well, that sounded pretty good, and that ended up being one of the songs that's on the record, "Hello Doom." So it was pretty instant, although I think you have to factor in the idea that all of us are, we're all quite like proactive musicians in our own right, and we hadn't been doing anything for a year. So it was like we were all just really bottled up, and it's like we just got there and it just went, oh, thank God, we were just finally making music with people together. And it all just kind of came out like that, I think.
I mean, so you got the sound, but how do you create it into songs? Because they are quite, even though they're kind of like jams, that they do have a sense of direction and they do feel like songs as well. So was there any kind of sense of sculpting them into songs, or is it actually purely the jams?
I think everything. I think Ben's right. I think one of the songs is literally the first. It's maybe one of the first thing we played. So we probably just played it a little bit and going, "Oh, that sounds good," and then just recorded it, and it ended up like that. A few of the other ones were like we'd have a bit of conversation about what the parts were working and adding in some different sections, but it was so quick. None of it.
was all
was no. I mean, oh,
Pete made them into songs. Like, we like Hello Doom was like 25 minutes long and now it's 16 or something, you know. Pete did that. Pete edited it down, you know. There was like a process of recording and then there was a process of editing afterwards. I think
definitely.
that's how it worked. Yeah.
But also I think Elizabeth, there was quite a lot of inspiration behind some of the songs, like Eternal, for example. I mean, that was quite a special afternoon when that came about.
Yeah, but I mean, I also that's also I'm much more of a sort of traditional songwriter probably than everybody else. So I think that's probably why that one is the kind of most kind of, you know, it was also just it just came out in one go, you know, but I'm used to writing sort of structured songs.
So in what way, Elizabeth? Well, you know, would that be you kind of sidekick guiding it into a song's sense of a song structure?
I think it's just really innate for me, John. I think I just can't help but write sort of 32 bar structured songs, you know, and I think part of it is that no, that's just the kind of music I listen to, but also for that song it was Stuart and Ben and I were sitting in the live room and everyone else had gone out for a walk and I think Ash was napping and Stuart started playing a little guitar riff and then we just kind of I just sang and then that became the song, you know. It was very like intuitive and Ben was playing at the same time. It was just very like just came out, which is good.
I mean, how long was the initial sessions booked for? Was it like a couple of days? And let's see what happens. You know, how long were you prepared to wait for till something actually happened?
We'd actually booked the studio. I thought we'd booked the studio for 7 days, but apparently I'd booked it for 8 days. And but I think it was by day 4 we'd actually pretty much recorded everything, and then the rest of it was overdubs and sort of tweaking and stuff. So in a way we could have probably left after day 4 and maybe done some overdubs and left it to Pete. So it was quick, and I mean, it felt like, I mean, it was a very strange time, wasn't it? You know, it's kind of like, I think there was a lockdown that Christmas, wasn't there? And then April 21, Scotland began to open up a bit. And so time was all a bit weird anyway, because we'd all been cooped up. So I don't know what it felt like for others, but it kind of felt like a long time and it felt like a really short time as well.
I mean, when the music itself, there's an introspection to the music, which I guess is part of that period, but there's an introspection to quite a lot of your music of the various members anyway, isn't there? So would this be a record you could record, you know, any time? Would it have to actually just be the tail end of the pandemic, or could you have actually made a not exactly the same record, obviously, but a similar-ish kind of atmosphere record now if you started doing it this week?
I think so. I think that combination.
I'd like to try.
Huh?
I'd like to try.
Yeah. I reckon like if all of us had got together like a year later or before the pandemic, it probably would have sounded quite similar. I don't think that as musicians, yeah, you shift and you change, but not that dramatically, you know.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Like a very democratic process, you know, to make the record. You basically, you're all standing in a room, you're all just feeding off each other. Is that way it works, or is there somebody, or is there somebody actually sort of guides it along, or is it just you change that role around? You know, who's giving the nod for the end of the song, or where it shifts or changes?
I think we had different starting points for each track, you know, and different people initiating each one. Like Hello Doom was actually originally a loop that Ben came up with. Sedna was the loops that Elizabeth came up with. Galax Arms, we started with a poem that my dad wrote. And Eternal, obviously, Elizabeth talked about how Eternal happened. And Mother Tongue was just a riff. It was like this kind of 60s vibe riff that Stephen came up with. So we kind of had a starting point, and then the rest of it was kind of, you know, it just kind of happened. And then Pete did all the hard work in a way.
Pete's the glue.
Yeah, exactly.
Pete Fletcher is a member of this band, really. Like it would not have been a record without him.
Yeah, he's amazing.
I mean, so as it went along, as you got to know each other better, does it change the way the music gets made, or even sounds? You know, that you know each personal parameters, what each person can do and what they like and things like that, or was it so pure? It was always about the playing, and you just locked in this kind of space.
I think the latter.
I think it was then. I think now we know each other more. I think that we would make a different record, because probably I think a lot of us, when we were up in Lewis, we were just you know, I think probably we didn't know each other so well, so we probably wouldn't have said something and gone, hey, what about if you do that? Or like, you know, I guess the people who knew each other a bit were doing that, but I wouldn't have done that with, say, Ben, whereas now I know Ben well, so I would feel comfortable being like, hey, Ben, like, what about this thing? Or, you know, how about we try this? Or I just think that it would probably change because we know each other better.
Yeah, totally.
Was Lewis as well like an additional member?
Definitely, yeah. And that actually, if anything, that was the only intention that we had when we got there, was to go and soak up that space and go into the surroundings, which we did musically and literally. We went and took things from the space, and you can hear stuff that we scavenged from the surroundings on the record. But yeah, it was like, let's go into that space and see what music is coming from this island. So yeah, I would go as far as to say that it was an additional, perhaps, member of the band or major contributor to that album. So yeah, I love these questions about what would it sound like if we did it now, because it's 2.5 years later. It was such a specific time. If we went somewhere else, if we went to a completely different setting, would we create a completely different album? Because what we did was plug into that surrounding and kind of try and reincarnate that. So yeah, I think a lot of the sounds you hear on the album are quite like archetypal of that context.
I mean,
I totally agree with Ben. Sorry, I was just going to say I totally agree with Ben, because in my head, when we were going up, I thought we were going to make a goth record. I was like, this is going to be a goth record. You know, Nick Hudson, who was going to be with us, he and I have been talking about it. We were like really convinced that it was just going to be like a goth record. And obviously it's something else entirely. And I do think that what Ben was saying about the land itself, you know, you just can't help it. I mean, the location of the studio is so remote and it's so unique. I don't think that anyone would be able to go and record there and not be influenced by it.
Yeah.
I mean, when you play the songs live, will they morph into something else? You know, I'm sure you haven't learned them note for note. I mean, they're just there's going to be like a looseness to them, and they will develop as the tour goes along, won't they? So is that the way it is? It's very organic, the music.
I think so. I think they've already changed. We played at Supersonic, and you know, we're not replicating the album. We're guided by the album, obviously, that we made, but we're interpreting it, and it's not like the arrangements are drastically different or anything. But A lot of the time when we were on Lewis, we maybe played something once, do you know what I mean? And we'd never played it before. So it's not like we rehearsed songs and then recorded them. So there's a bit of spontaneity. But I think we're kind of like, I don't know, it's about the atmosphere. And I think that's what we're getting with the live set.
I mean, so as you play them lots, will these sort of morph into something you think, oh God, I wish that was the original version? Or is it just
I think that always happens. But it
Mm.
always happens if music's got an improvisational element, is that you end up improvising more and they kind of come into become something that they weren't initially.
Yeah, not necessarily better or worse, just different.
Yeah, just different. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, would you, as you tour, as you play more gigs, would you actually, you get to the sound check and you start improvising something else, you'd actually have a new track ready to roll that night? Would that be something that you'd be trying to
That's
do?
a challenge. That's a challenge, Jen.
It's a great challenge, though, isn't it?
But we'll give it a go just for you, maybe in Manchester, yeah?
I've done it.
Yeah, that's the point. Stuart leaves the band.
I love a bit of improv, and I think the improvisation that went on this record is some of the stuff that makes it super special. So I'm quite happy to keep exploring that improvisation as we live, which we do a little bit within the framework of the songs. But yeah, like we're like thinking this morning, what if somebody actually asks us for an encore? We're a bit stuffed, really. We're just gonna have to come up.
Oh, you've just answered your own question there. You just have to make something up.
Yeah.
Yeah, Prolapse did that. I always remember Prolapse used to always make something up at every gig, and I think they did that for one of the field sessions as well. I think, yeah, more bands should be like Prolapse, although they are the worst band ever to Google.
Yeah, they didn't think of that 30 years ago. Yeah. There's a psychedelia to it, to the music as well, isn't there? I found it very psychedelic listen to it, especially on headphones.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely that vibe. And I think, I love the kind of ethos of psychedelia. It's about exploration. It's about kind of channeling it in a way. I think there's a lot of that on the album.
Yeah, because
I think that's with I think that with the best music, you kind of like, you feel like, I don't know, that something's kind of taking over your hands or your voice or
is there like a plan for this, or is it just something that's very, because it's so Quicksilver, the actual creative process where it came together is quite ad hoc. I mean, is there a plan to do more stuff? Are you going to make another album? Are you going to do more tours, or is it just an occasional project?
I think it's all quite loose. It's still quite loose, which is the way it's always been from the beginning, really. We've just kind of seen how it's, seen how we feel really with it. And if it feels right, we'll continue and do more. But at the moment, we're kind of keeping it open, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we're really excited about doing the tour, and that's kind of our primary focus at the moment, is to do like a really amazing tour. Enjoy that process and do some great shows. And I mean, we've sort of loosely talked about what's next. And obviously, we were lucky enough that the first, the initial work has come out on Bella Union, which is like amazing. So it puts us in a reasonably, really great position if you want to do some more, hopefully, fingers crossed. But yeah, I think we all get on pretty well as well. Like we all kind of know that now. Whereas when we were on Lewis, it was such exceptional circumstances and we didn't really all know each other. Or we would know, I knew Ben pretty well beforehand, and Ash knew Stuart and Elizabeth, but now we know each other as a kind of collective, and we know we get on and we also have fun together. Doing Supersonic was great fun. The rehearsals have been really productive and really enjoyable. So it's I think it bodes well.
I mean, it has to, is it this lineup, or could you add people to it and take people out? Would you know, depending who's available and the circumstances, or do you want to keep it the purity of those people who are in that particular time zone in that particular place is Silver Moth, and that's what it'll be as it continues, or can it open itself up or close itself down into different forms?
These are great questions.
We haven't really talked about that yet.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
But you're very welcome to join us, though, John.
Yeah,
I'll bring my bass down to the Manchester gig.
Look, for me, this project, it was very like undefined, and it's always been really fluid. Like Quicksilver, like you said, and I think that the ethos of that project, that is the ethos of this project, and we keep it like that. So at this point, I would say, and bearing in mind that we've not actually had this conversation between us as a band yet, but I would say that anything goes really. And at the moment, like Matt says, we're focusing on getting this tour done, and then we'll think about the next steps after that. So at the moment, there is no kind of specific set plan for what happens next. It could be that we do a live EP or an acoustic album, or we go and make a disco album like Foo Fighters. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
But it could go in any direction, and we honestly don't know. And I quite like keeping it like that, so that it's really open, so that whatever happens next is kind of in the moment and spontaneous and right for the moment.
Yeah, Elizabeth, I was just asking if the lineup is a solid lineup or a loose lineup. Can you add people to it? If somebody can't make the next album or do the next bunch of dates, they just don't turn up, and you just in a way adding to the creativity by having different people in the room at different times? Or is it about keeping it pure because there's something magical between this lineup that coalesced in that room on the Isle of Lewis?
Personally, I would like it if everybody who's in the band now were on the next record. I really love the connections that I have with, Ash and Ben and Matthew and obviously Stuart. And I think that that's something really special. And me personally, I wouldn't be inclined to record if somebody couldn't make it, and I wouldn't be inclined to bring somebody new into the mix, because I think that that's just my feeling. But also, I'm not the only person in the band, so
so in a way, the purity of the project is this adventure between these people and the ongoing, it's not a career, obviously. It's just it's an art project in a sense, and it's the exploration of these people's personalities and their musical narratives inside this collective.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of potential. I kind of agree with Elizabeth, and I think this group of people, I think we haven't, there's more there, I think, with us lot, and I kind of feel that I kind of feel that quite genuinely, that if somebody said, oh, here's a studio, do you guys want to dive in for a few days together, I just say yes without hesitation. And yeah, it's a bit like family, isn't it, in a way, being in a band, as we all know. It's like, it's not always easy, it's like it's a special thing. I've got a friend, or we've got a friend called Jo Beth Young, and she said to me once something like, it's a bit like having a kid with a lot. And I kind of get that, because you know what it's like with all of your projects, John, that you kind of forge bonds, and it is like a family. Sometimes it's a bit dysfunctional, and sometimes it's not. I think at the moment it feels great. So
yeah, I agree.
I mean, if you do another record, would it spoil it if people start preparing songs before they got to the studio? Would it be, or would it just be, it would morph and change into different things like everything always does? Or would you actually have parameters and rules that, we only make the music in that space, in that time together?
It's a really good question.
Stuart and I talked about this a bit, actually. Speak of the devil. And he was like, yeah, Stuart, John was just asking that if we were to record again, would we just go and improvise, or would we write stuff before, or would there be rules and parameters? And I was saying that we'd actually had a conversation about it, and you said you were like, I think we should do 50-50 stuff that we've prepared.
Yeah,
stuff that we
yeah, because you don't want to lose that element of it, you know. But at the same time,
what if what you improvised is really shit?
well, then you make the already written songs a bit longer.
But that's what I mean, like. But then again, maybe that element of risk is like something that's actually, you know, creatively like exciting, and maybe we shouldn't be prepared, and maybe we should go into this kind of almost like in a, you know, I was listening to this great podcast with David Keenan the other day, talking about his book England's Hidden Reverse, and I love that whole time period, like Coil, Throbbing Gristle, those bands. And I think that something that they really had at that moment was that kind of, they were like David said, you know, they were all cosmonauts, like they were out there on the edges of reality, like going out and traveling and finding things and bringing them back and making art out of it. And I think that, you know, he's talking about the magic and he's talking about the drugs, but I think there's also something creative in that, in like having nothing to hold on to, so that whatever emerges, it's totally unexpected. I think there's something powerful in that, you know?
There definitely is. And I would hate to lose the improvisational aspect, but it was also nice to demo some songs, because I think we could come up with something really good, not because I'm scared of improvising, but I think it would have a different element, and I think we could come up with something, you know, especially. Yeah, and also kind of knowing what everyone's strengths are, you know, like I'm sure like could like think of parts that would really suit the other people's playing and Elizabeth singing and all these kind of things that might happen naturally anyway, improvising. But if you really think about it, you could kind of, yeah. I mean, I'm the worst demoer in the world anyway. My demos are always like, I don't know, really sketchy. They're never particular. They're always like to remember an idea rather than to exactly pin down when certain melodies come in. So I mean, even a demo would result in a level of improvisation. It would just be a slightly more organized improvisation.
Yeah, like a spark, really, more than anything.
Yeah.
How do you write Mogwai songs? Mogwai songs have that exact, like, really tiny demo, and then everybody improvises. No.
Well, if they come from my demos, they do. there are some more organized people in the band, thankfully.
And everybody's on their own little journey, and somehow it coalesces into a thing. I always think that's that's my definition of the post-punk period. Basically, everybody played lead at the same time, but somehow
yeah. I love that.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, it kind of harken back to this interview me and Elizabeth listened to with David. Like he kind of spoke about that, about how music has an element of magic about it, and it's indescribable, and it's unquantifiable, and no one can, especially in such a kind of organized world where everything's kind of algorithmically analyzed to death. You can't analyze music. Like even AI at its most advanced that it's ever been, any piece of AI music is kind of soulless shit. Even if it can kind of, I don't know, whatever stupid thing they've got, like Johnny Cash singing an Oasis song or whatever. It sounds very like that, but you know, if that actually happened, it would have a kind of a level of soul about it that a computer can't get to. And I think that's why people love music and why people love live music, because it's a unpredictable, authentic human experience. And that's what I love about this project. It was a very human experience, and even though it kind of came together in a weird way, it was the kind of magic of us all in the room making the music that kind of that took it to the level it got to.
which is the crux of this whole thing, isn't it? It's not. Obviously, the music sounds great now, but it's the bits you can't hear. It's that bit. It's the magic between human beings in a room, somehow going down the mics and ending up in the music that makes the magic, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the purest form of, because it's some people don't even know each other, but finding a connection in a space. Yeah.
I think when we were at Black Bay, the overwhelming feeling I had was like when we were in the live room and Pete hit record, everybody just knew what to do. You know, there was no conversation kind of necessary. It's like we just did it.
Yes, and that's quite exciting, and it no safety nets, just trusting each other. Let's go. Yeah,
absolutely. And we didn't have any choice because we were kind of like we were in another lockdown in a way, because we were in the studio on the edge of the world, and we were there for 8 days, and all the ferry tickets and everything was booked in advance, and it's like, okay, well, we're there.
Yeah.
What horror film is this?
Yeah.
and I guess like what we talked about before, if you tried to make another record, and I'm sure you would have the music to do it, but if you actually ran out of music between you, that's okay, because that's actually what the project should be. It's kind of pure, isn't it? And it's about exploring the other people in the room, and you know what they can do, and if the bits you can work together on, and when you run out of bits to work together on, you just finish. Whereas, you know, the saddest thing is a band that just keeps going, even though those connections have all been lost. And
the thing, like, that's a really interesting point, because a lot of bands that I love from, you know, the post-punk era, they haven't continued to evolve, and there's a lack of dynamism, there's a lack of vitality in what they're doing, because they're doing exactly what you've just pointed out, John, which is there's a sense of going through the motions. And you know, that's something that I wouldn't want, you know, none of us would want, you know.
I think stasis is the enemy of creativity.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I think that's what happens to a lot of bands, you know, not every, you know, but a lot of people, especially I've noticed with people who had like a huge amount of success with, you know, a record. You find that people then spend a lot of time, you know, they're all together, maybe they don't get on anymore, but they're trying to recreate something. And, you know, even if what they're doing is good, you know, a lot of the time it can cause like personal problems, because it's like forcing a connection that just isn't there musically anymore. And I think you're right, John, that's something that has to be like respected.
I guess the problem you may have is, say, one or two of your tracks become insanely popular, and then you have to keep playing them over and over again, exactly the same.
It'd be a good problem to have, you know.
Isn't it? I mean, that's kind of
There's worse problems. There's worse problems, John.
That's what these bands have, isn't it? They have their one or two hits, and of course, it's great to be in a band that keep playing. It's not the worst thing in the world watching a band you used to love still playing the same songs 40 years later. It's a nice diversion. But in the context of what you're trying to do here, it's about the purity of the moment, isn't it? So
yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't necessarily be averse to keep playing these songs, but what I would be averse to is trying to recreate the same thing with new material.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And feeling like that we have to live up to an expectation that we're supposed to just keep making that music over and over again. You know? So yeah, I think if one of our songs is really popular and people want to hear that all the time, that's wonderful. But that's not to say that in 10 years' time we're still going to be like writing new music trying to sound like that song, you know, like we might just be doing something totally different. So I think we're capable of doing, you know, keep holding on to something that we made that's magic, but also evolve.